Our next session is called Creating Equitable Access to Capital. This will be a conversation with executives from Truist Foundation, CornerSquare Capital, and Combs Enterprises on how race can impact financial literacy and access to funding. They'll share what every business owner should know about their financial health and gaining access to capital. And this important conversation will be led by Zenaida Mann, a digital marketing expert. Zenaida, over to you.
Hi, good morning, good afternoon, depending on where you're at in the world. Today, as Tara said, we are going to talk about creating equitable access to capital. And what does that mean? Where's the money? How do we get funding for our businesses? That's what this conversation will center in. We have Lynette Bell, and she is the president of the Truist Foundation. Next, we have Armir Ketchen, executive director of CornerSquare Community Capital, and Jay Lundy, Investments and New Ventures at Combs Enterprises. And as Tara mentioned, I'm a digital marketing consultant and the founder of the Black Women's Business Collective. And I will ask specific questions to each of you and then entire panel questions. So to get started, let's talk about success and opportunity. So in the last year, what areas have you seen success for Black business owners?
Hi, everyone. It's a pleasure to meet you, see you, be in this digital space with you. So this past year, 18 months, has just been so challenging in so many ways. One of the things I did at my organization, Combs Enterprises, which is the organization with Sean Diddy Combs, is we actually created a platform called Our Fair Share. And Our Fair Share helped people get PPP loans. It was pretty simple. We had a site with some videos explaining PPP. And we connected people who went to that site to 7 different lending partners, a combination of big banks, CDFIs, and digital banks. And I would say resounding for us were a couple of things. The people who got through that process, either had a relationship with a bank or are willing to find a bank in their community that could help them. They also were opportunity ready. And for this, that meant having documents in order, taxes, all the paperwork about your business and corporation. Those businesses who had that were ready to fill out the applications, go through any troubleshooting or questions, and be able to be in a position to get capital. We saw that those who were not able to go through didn't have paperwork, didn't have a relationship with a bank, and just struggled to kind of put everything together. And we know that the deck was stacked against us. It was stacked against us before this even started. But it was one of those things where I think for me, just being ready as a business for whatever opportunity comes, knowing that, Black and brown businesses just get fewer opportunities to start. So when you do get that opportunity, being ready to go, being ready to submit is a key takeaway for me from the last 18 months.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Armir, would you like to jump in?
Yeah, I'll jump in. I want to echo what Jay said. I think it's been a very challenging time for the whole United States, for the whole country. But I really do like the way people stepped up to the plate. I mean, Congress passed legislation to help. Banks came in with capital. CFI stepped up. Small business resource providers came. And it really did show, like Jay said, that there's all kinds of discrepancy in the way people get capital. So it really highlighted that problem. So it made us take an even deeper look at what we can do in more strategic ways, smarter ways, better ways to connect people to capital. So it was really the worst of times, but also because of that, I think we had a really good response. We could do more and better, but I like where we're headed in terms of the energy, the awareness, and the focus to really get help to these resources and to these small businesses, which really is outstanding.
That's great. So Armir, let's keep it there. In what ways can you replicate that business in rural communities throughout the country? How can we replicate that success? I meant
that is so hard. I've lived in urban and rural communities, and I thought I had it bad in my urban setting until I moved to a rural setting, and I realized that the isolation is what makes it worse. My urban city, we had lots of resources, ways to get it. I mean, we can catch the bus. There's lots of things to do. But in the rural settings, it's harder, and people are more isolated. So we got to really have more intention about how we reach the rural communities. And I would say that, one way we're trying to do it in North Carolina is, with the help of banks like Truist, we're really trying to strengthen our ecosystem. So how do we connect people to all the resources that already exist? Like, how do we do that? How do we connect the dots so folks know where to go? And then what do we do and how do we work with our CDFIs to really get capital to those hard to reach people? And they need flexibility. Like whatever we do won't always work with that population because it's harder. So we got to be very flexible about how we do it. So that's really the key is flexibility, being intentional about what you're doing, and focus on the problem.
Thank you for that. Can you, for those who are viewing that may not know what a CDFI is, can you just briefly explain what that is?
Yeah, I know better than throw out acronyms. I do apologize. So
Oh, it's
CDFIs
okay.
are community development financial institutions, and they are financial organizations that provide services to people. So really, banks can only do so much because banks are regulated. So a bank, your deposit at a bank is insured by the FDIC, and so they only take so much risk. So hard loans, risky loans, they really can't do those. So banks support CDFIs that are certified by the government. Treasury comes in and gives us lots of money to do that. And our job is to go out and hit those hard to reach areas. Work with those hard to reach people who have credit issues, who have income issues, who are hard to reach, and we have more flexibilities built in. So because we get support from banks and from government entities, we have capital that we can go out and then redeploy in these hard to reach areas. That's what CDFIs do. And we can do better, of course. I think all of us can do better, but we really are working hard to try to figure out ways to serve our community even better.
Great. Thank you for that. So we've been talking a lot about banking. Lynette, you've worked in the banking industry for over 25 years. In your opinion, your expertise, how important is banking to the success and growth of a Black-owned business?
Yeah, thank you for that great question, Anita. And I'm going to lean into what Amir was talking about, this great ecosystem that supports small businesses. Businesses depend on banks, banks depend on businesses, and it really is a two-way street. And I want to take it just a step further that it is important to note that it is the people, the relationships that have to be built. We have relationship managers, business bankers, managers who lead our branches in those communities where businesses are growing and thriving are key to creating real success. Business owners need to connect with those people to build those relationships. Banks, as Amir stated, should be the staple, the cornerstone of our communities and provide the needed services in this industry. And we have a great opportunity to meet those unique needs of Black and Brown businesses that are in these markets to make sure that the demand that they have to create and build and grow are part of what they are provided. Right now, we know that Black entrepreneurs are more than likely than white-owned businesses to refrain from applying for loans. And I know we had PPP loans that Jay alluded to earlier, but again, they feel that their applications will be rejected. And some of the data does reflect that 38% of Black employer firms feel discouraged in applying for loans compared to their white counterparts at 13%. So I will say that it is on banks to provide and communicate the inclusive culture that we want to build to help ensure that our communities grow. A bank can't grow if the community is not growing. And so businesses being part of the DNA of our economy are critical to that. And so we got to make sure that access to capital, as Amir has alluded to, funding opportunities are available to those businesses. We are heavily regulated. I know Amir talked about that, and we probably feel the pressure of that more than anybody. But again, our solutions are based on those regulatory environments that we have to live in. And so we offer the opportunity to help those businesses grow. We are extremely proud at Truist that we were one of the most active PPP lenders in the country supporting our clients during this really unprecedented economic challenge. We mobilized thousands of employees trying to be really responsive to what was critically happening in our economy. And we provided about 120,000 PPP loans, totaling about $16 billion over the 2-year period. We know that when we looked at loans to businesses that were in majority minority census areas or in lower moderate income communities, 35% of our transactions went to those type of businesses. So more work to be done, as Amir talked about, but we want to make sure that when disruptions to business like pandemics happen, we continue to support communities, including underserved, and give those businesses the tools and solutions so that they remain financial and are vital to the success of that marketplace, both urban and rural.
I just jump in, and I think Lynette just said everything perfectly. I think that a lot of times we think about, and I do not work for Truist, but Lynette really talked about how there is a need for multiple stakeholders. So yes, banks are our greatest source of capital in most regards, but we need strong banks that are in the community. And just what I look at investments that I make for Combs Enterprises, I often see Truist investing in Black-owned fintechs. There's a really interesting platform called Greenwood that Truist has invested in. At the same time, we have to realize that there's a trust gap in these communities where people don't trust banks, even banks that are doing the right things. So having CDFIs, having other organizations, Yelp, just players who have different ways of engaging businesses, playing a role is so, so key. And I think any solution for any segment, let alone the Black segment, really has to have all of these players playing a big role. Otherwise, we're just not going to be able to overcome the gaps, which, you're exactly right. Twice as many of Black businesses are turned down. When we do get loans, our interest rate is almost 2% higher. There's a massive, massive, gap in the data that stems from a lack of trust in the system, which, as we all know, is for valid historical reasons.
That is amazing. Thank you for that. And what I will say, I'm just going to pause for all of the viewers. There is a lot of gems being thrown out here. I have my notebook. I know I'm moderating, but you should be writing this stuff down because there's so much given out. Let's jump into a little bit of that equity in action. I'm always action filled. What do? We have all of this information, all of this data. They're throwing it at us, at Black-owned businesses, throwing tons of data at us. So speaking of equity, there appears to be a lot of commonalities to what business owners need to secure in order to secure funding. So I'm hearing banking, I'm hearing relationships with bankers, CDFIs, but creating equitable access to funding requires that we help people where they are with what they have. So this is to the entire panel. How do we truly get started in this work? So besides saying go to a bank or do this, what is it that they need to do that they can do right now after this panel?
You said it already. I think you got to start where you are. Make an assessment and find out what where you are right now. Do the research and find out where you need to be. So you have where you are now as a starting point, and then you have where you need to be. So you got to find ways to fill that gap in, right? And you got to make a real assessment of where you are and what you're trying to get to. So do research. I think thankfully now there's so much research online that you can have so much information, and you can check when you see one thing written down, you can reference that one, see if it's accurate, and just keep on going and get real information. And thankfully here in our state, for example, we have a really good system of small business providers, TA providers that help small businesses get started with business planning and what have you. One of the things that our program also has that's very unique is because we got a large grant from Truist to make this possible. But one thing that businesses have a hard time doing is having equity to bring to the table. And the bank will usually require 15%, 20% down payment. They don't have it. So with our partnership with Truist, a borrower can come in with a little 5% down, and we will come in and we'll do 15, 20%, 25%. And that really does de-risk the loan. So the bank or the CFI partner can say, hey, we can make this loan now, even though the borrower didn't have the equity to put into the deal, because of CornerSquare on our part, that the lender has much less risk, and they can make that loan and feel much more comfortable with that loan paying off. But really, you got to start where you are, make an assessment of where you are, find out where you need to get to. One thing that Lynette always talks about is tenacity. You got to really have tenacity. Jay can speak to this as well, but what you can't do is give up. There's going to be a lot of things in your way to stop you, to slow you down. But you've got to have a real determination that you're gonna move forward and get it done, regardless of what you got to do. And along the way, build the right relationships, do all the things it takes. But really, you got to have some tenacity and say, I'm going to get this done, and I won't stop. And then go find people who can help you.
You definitely got to have that grit, right? You have to keep on going. I love that. Thank you. Jay or Lynette, would you like to add in on that?
Yeah, I can add a couple of things. So I think Amir talked about where you are. So for me, I think about 3 stages. If you are like so many people, side hustling, you can't put your foot all the way in, you're kind of out, go for it. Formalize your business, There's a lot of organizations, including the U.S. Black Chamber of Commerce, which is working on a way to kind of formalize a Black-owned business. That is really key for lots of funding opportunities. If you are already kind of going and kind of in that early stages, I think this is important at a personal level as well, but forming your board of advisors. So who are, and Amir talked about relationships, who are the people in your network that can help you? You may be the world's greatest t-shirt maker, but can you balance your books? Can you kind of think about kind of your supply chain? If not, you need to have someone who can rely on in your network. And then lastly, if you are kind of humming along, doing great, think about how you expand. Think about how you grow. That may be capital. That may be kind of taking a look at the business from a data and analytics standpoint, finding ways to engage new customers. But just depending on where you are, making sure that you're thinking about what's appropriate for you. And there are so many resources out there, almost too many resources. I think one solution I'd love to see in the marketplace is some place that gets the culture, gets the community, that aggregates this information and allows you to put in, hey, I'm in this state, I do this type of business, my revenue is XYZ, I want to get to this point, enter, options come up. Like that to me would be the gold line solution. I don't think that exists in a great way yet, but getting to a point where in the absence of that, you can figure out that for yourself, do that model and search and find is what I would recommend.
And I'll just add real quickly, I think Jay and Amir made some really strong points, but Jay and Amir are both talking about impact for businesses and what that means. So equity equals impact, because impact and understanding your business model, whether you have a cash business model, having your financials in a very concrete way that you can access and trace and track your cash flow analysis. So that if I'm talking to that trusted advisor, I can tell you in 5 minutes what my business strengths are, where the gaps are that exist today. That's equity for me because I'm driving impact. And so it's not just about, everybody else thinks for small businesses about accessing capital. Yes, that is the first lever, but we really need to provide a 360 wraparound services for businesses that talks about how do I get my social media platform done? In the area of COVID, when I had to close my business and recalibrate and restructure it, how do I get and use virtual to do my business so I have sustainability? There are plenty of nonprofit organizations that provide that technical support and that wraparound service. We at Truist were looking for a unique opportunity, and with CornerSquare, we provided a $40 million commitment to them to talk about helping community development financial institutions. I won't use the acronym, but they're an intermediary that supports micro to small businesses. Each one of them, the Black Business Investment Fund in Florida, Pathway Lending in Tennessee, all of them provide access to capital, but they also give businesses that wraparound services of, do your financials look correct in case you want to grow your business? Do you have the ability to pivot and get your social media linked up in a way that everybody keeps sustaining your growth of your business in a time when you're dark? I think those 360 services are so critical to success for businesses.
That's it. The ecosystem. That's what, really creating that circle for you, your circle of advisors, or, whatever you want to call it, you need to get that together. And they have some. So as Jay said, it's not perfect and we're all building it. But I think if we all work together, we can support these businesses wholeheartedly. So we move on, and I want, for those attendees on the call right now who are not a Black-owned business and perhaps they want to support, can we highlight some of the long-term effects of supporting Black-owned businesses? And specifically, I'm thinking for Jay and Amir, what's something that you've been working on that is likely to have a great impact on Black businesses within the next couple of years?
So this is something I get really excited about, because not only did we do a lot of work around COVID and PPP, and we're building out kind of that platform to be a information and content source geared around Black businesses, I'm also working on a very exciting concept that will be an e-commerce platform for Black businesses. So in addition to needing capital and going through COVID, as we all know, Breonna Taylor, George Floyd were big issues last year. And in the Black Lives Matter movement, you saw things like Yelp searches for Black-owned businesses skyrocket. The same thing happened on Google. But what we did not see was all of that translate into transactions for Black-owned businesses. a lot of people were searching, and maybe they eventually found a Black-owned product. But where do we shop? We shop on places like Amazon, on Walmart, and those places did an okay job, in my opinion. But there was no dedicated marketplace just for Black-owned products. So I've been working on a platform, and we've got a team building it that is going to do just that. And it's going to be important because it will be a B2C platform and be for everyone to find and support Black-owned businesses. But importantly, it will also have a backend, a B2B platform that will really provide these businesses with capital, with loans against transaction history, with different tools to help them understand their customers and craft the best digital campaigns to reach more customers. It will be a holistic approach to business, not just for those transactions, but also all the things behind the transaction that are important. So I'm really excited about that. We'll launch in February of next year. We'll have about 100 businesses on the platform to start. But we're kind of in stealth mode now, but you'll certainly see it in the news and the press once we're close to February.
I appreciate what Jay said. I can kind of echo it. Small businesses are so important to America. And it's not, most of us who have jobs work with a small business. It's not, these big companies do exist, but most of us and most of the employees work for small businesses. So, the fact that we're trying to expand capital for small businesses is good for America. Like there's no one that's going to be untouched by that. And, Truist made their investment in us before there was a pandemic, before there was a racial reckoning movement, because they are concerned about the racial wealth gap. They want to make sure that there's not these pockets of pervasive poverty and folks who don't have access to capital, not just African-American community, but Latino, Hispanic community and the rural communities. We've got to support, all of our citizens, not just those who work for large companies, but again, most of us work for smaller employees. So really this whole notion of what we're trying to do is really about lifting up the entire country, lifting up the areas that don't have access to capital, who have the greatest need, so they can be on a level playing field. It's good for everyone. So that's what it's all about. We focus on the minority populations and women and rural businesses because they need it the most, but it really does lift up the entire ecosystem of small business, and everyone benefits. There's no losers at all.
Ramya, that was wonderful, awesome segue to Lynette. So in your role at Truist, how do you plan on leveling the playing field for small businesses?
Yeah, that's a really great question, Zenaida. I think that for Truist, one of the things that we want to do, and again, we merged 2 years ago, got the merger approved between SunTrust and BB&T, two Southern-based firms, and we now are a purpose-driven company, and it is our mission to inspire and build better lives and community. Accomplishing this is more than just simply about, from my perspective as leading our foundation, and I have a dynamic team of women who are so passionate about this work that they are all leaning in. But one of the things that we don't want to do is just provide a check writing facility to nonprofit organizations or intermediaries that look at this work. We actually started post the merger of looking at where's the right space. And then the pandemic happened. And what we learned in the pandemic was that, wow, small businesses, as Amir talked about, are the fabric of this country. And they were impacted at a high number. And Black and brown businesses even aggravated at a much higher number than normal businesses. And so we want to make sure that we create a unique advantage of not only being present in urban and rural markets and tailoring our solutions to those communities based on their uniqueness, but we want to be supportive in driving intent and driving impact work. Like we want to do impact investing in a way that speaks to changing not only the access to capital for small businesses, but really building the ecosystem, providing convenings and offering solutions in a way that speaks to maybe even adjusting to policy. I mentioned earlier that we were looking at, different intermediaries that were CDFIs, community development financial institutions. And during the pandemic, Miami Bayside Foundation, who created a program, taught entrepreneurs how to use all social media and technology tools to build their businesses during the pandemic, when so many of them had to shift to online or to virtual. And so this was especially crucial to help those businesses move into spaces of sustainability and growth, even during a pandemic. And we know that 46% of businesses were in jeopardy of not reopening post-pandemic, but we really are looking at the solutions that will help level the playing field for small businesses, not a one size fits all, because we know that communities are unique in what needs they have. So to me, if I would end with anything, we're here to not only discuss, understand, and uplift those solutions, but we're here to impact and learn from our communities that we're here to support. And small businesses is one area that we're going to heavily be invested in strategically from our foundation at Truist. So this is really important to us. This work has to continue.
Awesome. All right. So it looks like we have a lot to look forward to. And again, as the ecosystem goes, business owners, you have to go out there. You have to be tenacious. You have to have grit. You have to apply. You have to reach out, cold call, cold email, whatever it is you need to do. And as you can hear, we have wonderful people out there in their organizations and businesses that are working for you. So we're all there. All right. So we're going to move on to our closing. We'll save some time for Q&A from the audience. So what are you reading or listening to that everyone should check out in this moment?
I'm happy to go first. I'm going to cheat. I listen to a lot of audiobooks and podcasts. There's a great podcast called Earn Your Leisure. Earn Your Leisure. It's by these two young brothers who just speak about wealth creation, speak about business, speak about just all aspects of kind of financial literacy in a very accessible, culture-driven way. It's fun, but you learn. Really like it. Highly recommend it. Earn Your Leisure. And there's another, I'll give two. I'm going to cheat here. There's a blog I really like called Culture Banks, BAN, I think it's X. But it's kind of a weekly newsletter that goes out that is just rich with information. It's the stuff you'll see in a Wall Street Journal, but written with a spin that is interesting, more culturally nuanced, but also just as, if not more, informative on the facts. So Earn Your Leisure podcast to listen to, and Culture Banks, a great newsletter to sign up for and get an email once a week.
That's great. Thank you for that. And if you have more than one, you can throw them all in. The more resources, the better.
That's right. I'm reading right now, and this was provided to me by one of my teammates, The Happiness Advantage. And I just think during COVID, it's just such a strange time for all of us. And so being introspective and really diving into happiness. The Happiness Advantage is one book I'm reading. And the other one is How Women Rise. It's co-authored by Marshall Crawford and Sally Helgerson. Those two are really, really great books that I would tell people to lean into and to read.
I'm actually reading something fun right now. And this when I was in the fourth grade, my teacher read a book to us that really helped me get a love for learning and reading. And that's a book by Walter Dean Myers called Fat Sam, Cool Clyde, and Stuff. And my wife got it for me because I told her how much I really, it turned me into a reading kind of a person. And it's about a group of young boys who grew up in Harlem in the 70s. And it just really opened up for me a love for reading, a love for learning. And so I'm just rereading again. I'm having a great time reading it again. I'm listening about my fourth grade teacher who read it to us was a starting point. So it helped open up some doors for me. So I'm having a good time reading that right now.
All right. Thank you for that. And this is one of my favorite questions to ask people before we go to Q&A. And that would be, if you can share a short message with the entire world, what would you say?
One of my favorite quotes, Zaneta, and somebody gave it to me, and I thought it was so profound. Never forget that justice is what love looks like in public, by Dr. Cornel West. Who I love, by the way. Yes, it's a good one.
Good one.
Lynette, I'm gonna go with that one too. That is great. That's a great one.
That really is. Uh-oh, Jay, the pressure is on you.
I mean, I just can't compete with that. But the one thing I would say is, you live once, and I think that obviously COVID has been awful. Being of color, there are things that you face, but you live once, and for me, that means if that means some days you work hard, some days you go for your dreams. Do that. Don't be complacent. If you want to do it, you want to start that t-shirt company, do it. You live once. You don't want to regret it 5, 10, 20, 30 years later.
Awesome. All great advice. So we have a few questions and a few minutes left. So let me get to the first one from Deidre. The question is, what resources are available for startup businesses that are pre-revenue?
So I'll jump on this just because part of my job is I invest in companies and I talk to 10, 20 companies a week. Right now, from a startup perspective, the environment is great. I don't think we've seen anything like what we're seeing now, which means startups that are pre-revenue, pre-product are getting funded. There are a lot of early pre-stage and seed stage companies that invest particularly in Black and women-owned founders. So I don't know if we're getting contact information, but I'm more than happy to chat with folks about that, just because I can connect, depending on what your idea is, with some of these founders or these firms that are out there looking to fund startups.
Yeah, and I would add to that. Jay's absolutely right. I would add that CDFIs would be a great place to start, and I would recommend people go to cdfifund.gov and find the CDFIs that operate in their states and begin to research them. They're making loans to startups, so cdfifund.gov is another resource. And again, I say that because CDFIs don't have a problem with making loans to startups, whereas it's riskier for a lot of other banks. So I would start with that resource.
Yeah, I think both recommendations are fine. I think for some of the technical support, I would go to the SCORE, U.S. Chamber of Commerce, even SBA, Small Business Administration actually has types of solutions for startup businesses. Yes.
And that's an
SBA.gov. Yes.
We have another question from Alicia, and it says, are there any resources for single owner businesses? I'm a small business bookkeeper, and I'm also trying to launch a transportation company. So single owner, I think she's thinking about like the tech startups where they have co-founders and stuff. So she single owner.
Absolutely. Same resources we just talked about. Same ones. The resources out there for her. Absolutely.
Yep. And don't feel like you're alone. There are, I think, about 1 million single member entities out there. More than that, actually. Most of Black businesses are single member entities. So you are actually in the majority.
I would second that. Okay, so I'll go to the next question. Historically, financial institutions have had hesitations in funding rural and in agricultural type businesses due to increased risk involved. What are Truist and other financial institutions doing to ensure rural and other agricultural banks are a reliable capital source?
Yeah, that's a really great question. I think that, as Amir talked earlier, we're a heavily regulated entity, right? And so every bank is different based on their charter, but most financial institutions, if you're located in rural markets, farming is a critical component of the industry that exists there. And they have to provide small farm loans. There are regulations that we report to annually that talks about not only small business lending, but small farm lending. And so banks have a responsibility to be inclusive about that. I would say if you're in a community, a lot of community banks do a lot more farming and rural transactions than a large big bank. I just put that out there. That's just the way it is. But if you have banks in your community, they're all regulated. Go to their regulator page and see how many, and we have to report it annually, how many small business loans they made and how many small farm loans they're made. And if they're telling you they can't do it, you can go to documentation that's has to be posted in their lobbies that, hey, we make small farm transactions, we make small business transactions. Regulated by the police of financial services industry, we have to be supportive of the industries that exist in our marketplace. So I would just look in your communities and see who's there and find out who is the top lender, providing that level of investment based on the type of industry you find yourself in.
That's a gem. Okay, so we have unfortunately come to the closing. We have one more question. It should go really quickly. It's from Stephanie. How important is being certified as an MWBE for gaining capital?
The more certifications, the better, particularly if you're looking for other supply diversity, to get in supply diversity pools, to get, business and grow your business. So the more, the better.
That's right. All right. Thank you so much. Thank you to the entire panel for such an engaging discussion. discussion. Now I'll hand it back over to our host before we go on to our next session. Use the resources. Thank you. Bye.